Good evening, I'm Enarita Clore and welcome to Churikua. Tonight, in our stories compilation, we will listen the episodes related to Aisha Kandisha, the Hanan defense, Kruununhaka's headless colonel, and the insane janitor. I also remind you that among each episode you will listen little musical intermissions. So enjoy because the night awaits for you. I have lived in Alicante my whole life, but my mind was kind of messed up because I didn't know what to study at college. So I took a gap year in Ceuta, in Morocco, with two of my friends. One of them had a relative who had an apartment that we could rent. We got a job and everything seemed to be okay. We had the idea of visiting other cities there. We went to El Jadira, a beautiful city, but we arrived kind of late, almost at night. We started looking for a place to stay and a good place to have dinner, but just at that moment we had the idea of going to the sea and enjoying its beauty. Even though the sun had already set, we saw a very gorgeous woman with a wonderful and long black hair waving while the wind was blowing, such as playing with it. Her beauty was so that it was impossible to not look at her. Her voice was melodious as she spoke. She had the particularity of speaking several languages. Something made me astonished, and I fell in love with her immediately. Her beauty was masterful and made us fall in love with her beauty. Her enchanting eyes and her voice were so hypnotizing, and she was inviting us to go to the sea with her. We didn't pay attention to her feet until I stumbled with something, and once I finally avoided falling down and recovering my equilibrium, I realized my mobile fell down, and at the time of picking it up, I saw her feet. They were camel's feet. I couldn't believe my eyes. I became scared immediately. I cried out, and just as naturally, I unconsciously said, "Oh God, God bless us and relieve us with mercy." I took the silver chain I had on my neck, and suddenly, without looking back at her face, just blew a kiss to us, turned softly round, and left. It is worth mentioning that my friends didn't realize what actually happened until she left. I told them about that, but they seemed to not believe what I said. The next day, we took a tour through the shore, and we were told about the Portuguese invasion to the city and above all the legend of Aisha Kandisha, a beautiful woman who, according to the Moroccan folklore, is a jinn, a kind of genie with certain magical powers, with goats or camel's legs, who attracts young men and seduces them, makes them get mad, or kill them. This entity tends to appear close to the rivers, the sea, or wells. When I heard this story, I was stunned, and I couldn't figure out how this creature was hunting us that night. Sure, you're wondering about how my friends didn't realize about it. The same I do, and I still do until nowadays. Later, for my surprise, the current story of the former Aisha Kandisha in real life was told. There are two versions. In the first one, she was an orphan who, after losing her family by Portuguese troops, started seducing soldiers and ending their lives. Nevertheless, the most famous in El Jadida, was the one that said that she was the daughter of a Spanish count who was from Ceuta. As a diplomatic resolution with the Arabians, she stayed living there, taking baths in the strait and giving the name of Jebel Musa or Mount Musa. Then got married, and thanks to the war with the Portuguese troops, her husband died. She took the initiative of seducing the Portuguese soldiers and carrying them to where the Moroccan troops would be waiting for them to end with them. After the tour, I remained unclowned. My mind was messy, so I decided to ask my friends, but they still thought that I I don't know what to think or wonder. Anything from this nature had happened to me before until I saw it. I'm a student from UNAM on Morelia campus. I decided to take a workshop that seemed to be very interesting. It ended at 8. My friend Itzel and I decided to take it. But one day, after finishing the session, we stayed asking the facilitator some questions and organizing a project we had to hand in a few days. So we went out after 8:30. We went on the street and saw a very bony hand begging through one of the windows saying, "A piece of bread or a little water for God's sake, I'm dying." Without hesitation, I had half of my bottle of water and I gave it to her. We were concerned and feeling pity about her and decided to go running to the person in charge of monitoring. We told her what we saw, but she just had rolled eyes and accepted to go growingly. When we left, there wasn't anyone there. I explained that we had given her a bottle of water that was mine and actually bought it, and I wrote my name on it with a marker in order to not confuse with someone else. At the end, she said she would be looking forward to a case such as we described being on the place shown concerned by someone trying to do an awful joke or the most possible thing that maybe with giving the bottle to a homeless person. Next day, she told us she had found the bottle of water empty, thrown in that place. A janitor found it and gave it back.
She gave it to me, and it was empty, of course. It was highly possible that a homeless person drank the water and threw it right there, but we, tired of that, preferred to agree with her. But we decided to look for more information and know what was going on. Once the workshop session finished, we decided to delay the time to leave, going to the restroom, talking until it was already 8:30, and went to the same place, but we didn't see anything. Some days passed without any results, so during those days, we had been always bringing something, a torta, a sandwich, or cookies, with the idea of giving it to her, and of course asking her name at least. A week later, we ran into her. We saw her hand and we took it. I asked Excel to record her because if not, we won't have evidence in case we have to talk with any authority and won't believe us. We heard her saying again, a piece of bread or a little water. For God's sake, I'm dying. I grabbed her hand and I told her, calm down, calm down. We have water and food for you. Thank you so much. What's your name? Leonor. At the moment she told me her name, I stopped grabbing her hand and started preparing everything to give her food. Meanwhile, I continued talking to her. I'm Laura, and she's my friend Itzel. We want to help you. Why are you telling us you are dying? We want to help you. Why are you here? How did you get in? I gave her food, and after that, she just said, thank you so much for the meal. I live here. Everybody know me. Maybe you are from another place and you don't know that, but my father is a very important man. And my stepmother, well, I prefer not to tell you more about. After all, no one can help me. More beyond what you have done at this time. Thank you so much for your help. Later on, I took the lantern off my cell phone and pointed at the window, but there wasn't any answer from her. I felt pretty sad and concerned. Her hand was bony, dirty, and very, very cold. Next morning, I took advantage of my classes, not starting yet. So I asked my boyfriend because all his family is from there, and he didn't he didn't know her. So I told him what happened to us the night before, and he told us, that sounds like the legend of the hand on the fence. Little later, he told us about this story, which is very old. It was from the colonial age, when the city's name was Valladolid. A Spanish man called Don Juan Núñez de Castro, who got married with his beloved Doña Leonor del Paso in Spain. They both had an only daughter called Leonor. After Leonor was born, Doña Leonor died. After the widow period, and due to the ideas of the time, and little Leonor needing a mother, Don Juan found Doña Margarita, who seemed to be the ideal person. After having several issues with businesses, he decided to move to New Spain, to Valladolid, where his fortune increased and became a very famous and a man of respect. Leonor grew up and was highlighted because of her beauty. Doña Margarita, who had already been bad with her since they were in Spain, was waiting for those long business trips which Don Juan did in order to lock Leonor down and didn't allow her, except on Sundays, just to go to Mass. There, and with her great beauty, a handsome But real guard, Manrique de la Serna y Frias, fell in love with her immediately, and his love was reciprocal. Secretly, he went to see her in the basement through the window, and they enjoyed their love, and Manrique decided to ask her family to marry her and went to see the viceroy. Doña Margarita realized this and forbade the Eastmen to see her or bring her any food or water. The windows were covered, and because of the North's despair, one of the goods got broken. So, to read, she was begging for some bread or water. People realized about this, and the rumors spread out. But due to the fact they were a famous and an important family, Doña Margarita was able to get away with it until time and fortune put the pieces all together, making Don Juan and Don Manrique came across on the road, and he gave him the letter, and Don Juan accepting the proposal amazed. But he decided that the formalities could be finished once Doña Margarita knew about it. When they arrived, Doña Margarita was unable to run away, and once a maid screamed, echoing the place, they realized Leonor died in the basement, dirty, bony, and with any piece of beauty was behind. This caused great pain and grief in Don Manrique. He and Leonor got married, and she was buried a little later. I showed him the video, but it was as if a translucent hand was there, almost unseen. I couldn't believe my eyes. I felt bad, but I started feeling worse seeing how much Leonor had been suffering and still is. Since that day, we haven't seen her again, but we agreed with the fact that if we see her again, we would all help her as far as we are allowed to.
I remember when I started college. I'm from Nastola, so I need a place to stay. So the only chance I got was to stay in the apartment building that is the university's property in Kruununhaka neighborhood on Vironkato Street. When I furnished there and started my classes, everything seemed to be calm and quiet until one night, while I was coming back from a bar with my friends, I got into the elevator and, for my surprise, I saw a soldier, more precisely a colonel from another time, such as from the beginning of last century, translucid and headless. His head was under his arm, and the only thing I did was keep my horror inside of me and got off as fast as I possible to. Once I was out of there, I walked as fast as I could, and once I saw no one else was behind me, I ran to my apartment. Once there, I locked the door and dropped my purse on the floor. I went to my bed. I put blanket on my head and with the soft light of my cell phone, I remained in silence. I saw a few players, and when I saw it's been a long time and everything was okay, I fell asleep. The next morning, I did my academic routine as always, but my friend Army realized that I was under the weather, so she asked me about it, and I told her I'd leave, so she said in response, I'm glad to hear that at least you're feeling bad because of being with us. I feel much better. After that little time, we went to my apartment. We had our meal and heard someone talking or arguing with someone else loudly in the apartment beside of mine. But we felt scared once I remembered it was empty and no one was living there. We were overcome with fear and we hid in the bathroom. We stayed there for a while. Due to this, I prepared a little improvised luggage and stayed the night at Armies. After this event, I had to go back, of course, something mandatory earlier or later. Once I came in, what was my big surprise? Seeing the colonel in my room, looking at my papers related to my classes and to the course I would take in the next period. There was the colonel standing up with his head under his arm. I couldn't bear it and I screamed. Two of my neighbors from apartments close to mine came into the corridor. A man and a woman went to help. When they arrived, I couldn't resist it and I blacked out. When I got consciousness, I was in the corridors round with those neighbors and the building manager. I explained what I saw in the last few days, and then the manager said, "So you met Alexei? Is that his name?" Well, that's how he's called around here. Little is known about him. He's surrounding the building and some nearby places. He likes riding the elevator. He's always with his head under his arm, and sometimes he tends to argue or talk loudly in empty rooms or apartments. And of course, he loves looking through his inhabitants' papers. Why is he still here? We are wondering the same. Maybe for the same reason as other ghosts in the city. Maybe it would be better to tell you about him once you arrive. After recovering, I called Army. She agreed to stay with me that night. I told her about Alexei and we started wondering about how his life ended like this. Supposedly, he's there since the early 20th century and in order to have some fun, riding the elevator to and fro, talking or arguing probably alone in empty places, looking through papers. Issues that now I can see from another perspective as a nosy ghost, making me feel pity about him. There is no doubt that he continues in this world having more fun, dead, than when he was alive. My name is not your business. I was the janitor of the school that it's a couple of squares far from here. It was hard to be in charge of everything, cleaning classrooms, restrooms, and offices. Fortunately, I didn't have to take the bus to get there, and I saved some bucks that were necessary. For a long time, I was told that I didn't clean anything, that the restrooms were very dirty, this, that, and so on. One day, I dropped by accident a bucket of dirty water, which I cleaned the classrooms with. I crashed with a teacher. She came back because she forgot something there. She ran, and threw me the water. Some of it wet her and also wet me. She said that once we crashed, I took out that on her throne, her the dirty water. Could you believe that? Supposedly, I was seen smoking in the yard or that at the entrance of the school and some other issues. I'm not a machine, but I was highly required.
Renante died
So
immediately,
much,
and Rowena in the
and
hospital.
if it wasn't enough,
Her absence
Albertico,
was noticed
my
immediately
30-year-old
because
son,
there
was always
weren't
in
any
trouble.
more creatures
He got ill,
threatening
and
that
was
part
in
of
the
the
water
city
fighting with
for a
his school
certain
classmates.
time.
That made me get angry
I
and
miss
bother me
Rowena,
so
and
much.
I'm sorry about
Bugs
what she
weren't
turns
enough,
into.
so I
Now,
actually took a second job
more
doing
than before,
what I know.
I continue
but
missing her
in this
and
case,
loving
it
her.
was in a shelter. Nevertheless,
Goodbye,
it was too much work,
my
more
dear
than at school. I
as
didn't hear
one.
any complaints about my job. So finally, something good. A month later, on the vacation period at the school, I was notified that I was fired. I begged them and told them I needed a job, but my pleas weren't heard. I was sacked. The job at the shelter was the one left, and because there were other people working at the times, it was impossible. I worked more. Albertico started to come to bring money home. I thought he was working part-time after school, supposedly selling stuff, and he'd never told me where or what was it. But later on, I realized that instead of helping me and work, he was growing stuff from the shelter. Once I realized about this, I was called and was accused of making Albertico to rob and to sell stuff. I said the truth. It was very painful to do it, but that was what it was. A thief who robbed stuff and was taking me with him in the water. They didn't believe me. That hurt me so much. I was told that it was time to go and get my stuff. So I was sacked. I couldn't bear it. And I started crying, and begging again for my new chance. That chance I wanted of staying there. But there wasn't. I wasn't just shouted out. I was also told to stop crying and go away. Albertico was there in the shelter, rubbing a box full of cans of food and other stuff, and told me, "Forget about it, Mom. With what I'm carrying, we can live. Don't work. Those people don't like you. If they have more than enough bucks, and we don't, we need them more than them." Little later, I heard that the police was called by the shelter staff. We were going to be arrested. I could spare more and more, so I took him with me to the restroom which was next to where we were, and he had a rag in his hands, which was taken from the storage room. I argued with him because I told him that both of us were going to be arrested, and he told me that I didn't have anything to worry about. That sure, if he hurried up, he could escape and he could take me out from jail with help of his bosses. That he could sell drugs and rumor stuff. I got very, very disgusted with him. That I hit him. He was crying out and asking me to stop, but I took the rag and pushed it through his neck to silence him until he fell on the ground. I realized that Albertico was dead. I killed him. I killed him. I killed him. I didn't have a son anymore. I didn't have a job. Sure, I would go home and lose everything too. All, all I dealt with, all my effort in this life was slipping through my fingers. I started crying out, and I hear how the police were arriving. I went upstairs to a great balcony, the highest from the building. I heard how the police were screaming at me to go down and that I didn't try to do anything else. They didn't believe anything I would say. So I just told them everything was their fault and mine. I drew myself from there. I don't remember what else happened, but since then they respect me. Everybody here does. They are afraid of me. Even you. Sure, you are like the others, blaming me for what it is and for what is not, or stuff you have done. So, what would you do then?